Ladies and gentlemen, there is a silence that speaks louder than noise, a stillness that shouts with clarity, and in that stillness where no one else is watching, advising, or applauding, you meet the most powerful version of yourself. Being alone isn't a weakness. It is not a void that needs to be filled with people, noise, or approval. Being alone is a sacred opportunity. It is where you learn who you are without the masks, without the expectations, without the performance. Alone, you find your essence, you confront your truth. So often, we are taught to fear being alone. From childhood, we're surrounded by voices telling us that solitude is something to be avoided. We're told that being surrounded by friends, having a partner, building a network, those are the signs of a successful life. And while community and connection are beautiful things, being alone does not make you broken, unlovable, or behind. It makes you human, and more than that, it makes you powerful. Aloneness strips away the distractions. It peels off the layers we put on to impress, to belong, to be accepted. When you are alone, there is no one to perform for. No one to convince. No one to adjust yourself for. You get to stand fully in who you are, with no apology and no audience. And that is a rare and valuable experience in a world that constantly demands we adapt to fit in. In solitude, we are invited to listen more deeply, to reflect on our choices, to understand our patterns, to hear the soft, quiet truth within us that so often gets drowned out by the noise of life. In the quiet moments when there is no one else's voice to overpower our own, we begin to hear ourselves clearly. And when you start to hear yourself clearly, you begin to heal. Growth doesn't always happen in the crowd. In fact, some of the most significant, most lasting transformations happen when no one is watching, when we sit with our pain rather than avoid it, when we face the truths we've been running from, when we learn to soothe ourselves rather than seeking someone else to do it for us. That is where resilience is born. That is where confidence is built, not the kind of confidence that comes from being admired or validated by others, but the kind that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that you are enough on your own. Aloneness offers a sacred mirror. It shows you not just who you are, but who you are becoming. It challenges you to take responsibility for your own happiness. It reveals where you've been outsourcing your peace, your self-worth, your sense of purpose. And once you become aware of that, you gain the power to take it back. You reclaim the parts of yourself you gave away trying to be loved. You rebuild yourself with intention, not out of reaction to the world around you. Yes, it can be lonely. It can feel empty at first. But emptiness is not the enemy, sometimes it's the beginning. Just like a field must be cleared before it can be planted, your life sometimes needs space before it can be renewed. And that space, scary, quiet, uncertain as it may feel, is fertile ground for the most authentic version of you to rise. Being alone teaches you boundaries. It teaches you to discern who deserves your energy. It teaches you to love yourself not just in theory, but in practice. You learn to cook for yourself, care for yourself, entertain yourself. You stop needing permission to feel whole. You stop negotiating your worth. And when you do enter relationships, friendships, love, work, you do so from a place of strength, not desperation, from fullness, not lack. So if you find yourself alone right now, don't rush to escape it. Don't numb it or fill it with distractions. Instead, lean into it. Listen to what it's teaching you. Let it stretch you, let it grow you, because this season, though quiet, may be the most powerful chapter of your life yet. Aloneness is not a punishment. It is a gift, a doorway, a teacher. It's not a sign that something is missing, but that something meaningful is forming. And if you let it, it will change you not into someone else, but into more of yourself. In a world that is constantly buzzing, phones vibrating, Social media updating, people talking, demands rising. It can be nearly impossible to hear anything but the noise around us. We are so accustomed to the external world shaping our attention that we rarely pause to ask, what is my own voice saying? What do I truly feel, need, want, or believe? The answers to those questions don't live in the noise. They live in the quiet. They live in the spaces in between, where silence speaks more truth than 1,000 opinions ever could. And that space is found in solitude. Solitude is more than being alone. It is being present with yourself. Not just physically alone, but mentally and emotionally still enough to notice the subtleties of your own being. It's in that quiet state that your inner voice begins to rise, sometimes softly, sometimes fiercely, but always honestly. That voice may be a whisper at first, especially if it has been drowned out for years by the expectations of others, by fear, by pressure, by the desire to fit in. But over time, in the sanctuary of solitude, that whisper grows clearer. The inner voice is not dramatic. It doesn't scream. It doesn't compete for attention. That's why we often miss it. It's easy to ignore it when we're surrounded by activity, running from meeting to meeting, checking our phones 100 times a day, chasing approval, validation, and performance. In the presence of constant distraction, the voice within us becomes buried under a pile of shoulds and musts. But when we remove the noise, the expectations, and the external influences, that voice returns not because it ever left, but because we finally created enough stillness to hear it. That voice holds our truth. It knows what brings us peace, what gives us purpose, what wounds need tending, and what dreams are worth chasing. It doesn't need to be loud because it is deeply rooted in who we are. And solitude gives us the space to meet that voice with respect, with patience, and with curiosity. It is in solitude that we ask ourselves the deeper questions. Who am I beneath the titles, the roles, the obligations? What do I value when no one else is watching? What kind of life do I want to create? When you give yourself permission to listen, to truly listen without interruption, without judgment, you begin to form a relationship with yourself that is intimate and honest. You become more aligned. You begin to notice what feels right, not just what looks right. You stop making decisions based on pressure and begin making them based on purpose. That's the power of tuning in. And solitude is the channel through which that tuning occurs. There's a kind of peace that solitude offers, a peace not born from comfort, but from clarity. When the mind settles, the heart speaks, and when the heart speaks, healing happens. Insight happens, direction becomes visible. It doesn't mean that all your problems vanish in solitude, but it means that your response to them becomes wiser, more intentional, more grounded in who you are rather than who others expect you to be. Many people run from solitude because it feels uncomfortable at first. We've grown used to surrounding ourselves with noise, so we don't have to sit with our feelings. But the irony is, the very peace we're chasing through others, through achievements, through distractions, it's found when we stop running, when we get quiet, when we get alone. Solitude isn't isolation. It's connection, not to others but to yourself. And when you are connected to yourself, truly connected, everything else becomes clearer. Your relationships deepen, your choices sharpen, your confidence strengthens. Because you're no longer led by confusion or chaos, you're led by something deeper, something quieter, something real, and that something is your own voice, a voice that can only be heard when you're brave enough to be alone and still enough to listen. In a world that constantly tells us how to be, what to do, and who to become, it's easy to forget that the only validation that truly matters is the one we give ourselves. From childhood, we are taught to seek approval from the people around us, our parents, teachers, friends, even strangers. We are conditioned to look for affirmation in the eyes of others, to measure our worth by external standards. But this reliance on others for validation can leave us feeling empty, uncertain, and dependent. True power, however, comes from within, from the ability to validate ourselves and to trust in our own value without needing constant external reassurance. When we seek validation from others, we are giving away our power. We become dependent on the opinions and judgments of people who may not even fully understand us. The opinions of others can be fleeting, influenced by their own experiences, biases, and circumstances. If we base our sense of worth on these external factors, we are at the mercy of the ever-changing winds of other people's approval. One day we may feel seen and accepted, and the next we may feel ignored or rejected, simply because we've allowed someone else's view of us to dictate how we feel about ourselves. This creates a fragile foundation for self-worth, one that is constantly shifting and unpredictable. But when you learn to validate yourself, when you learn to affirm your own worth, you create a solid and unshakable foundation. Self-validation is not about arrogance or self-centeredness. It's about recognizing and accepting your own intrinsic value, regardless of what anyone else thinks or says. It's about understanding that you are enough as you are, that your worth does not need to be proven or earned, but simply recognized and accepted by yourself. Self-validation requires deep self-awareness. It means being honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses, your successes and failures. It means acknowledging your mistakes without letting them define you, and celebrating your achievements without seeking someone else's applause. It requires you to look within and recognize that you are worthy of love, respect, and success, not because of what others say about you, but because of who you are at your core. The practice of validating yourself begins with self-acceptance. It means no longer chasing after someone else's version of who you should be, and instead embracing who you already are. It involves letting go of the fear of judgment and criticism, and instead standing firm in your own truth. When you validate yourself, you stop seeking approval from others because you no longer feel the need for it. You realize that the only approval you need is your own. This kind of self-validation doesn't mean that you stop caring about others or their opinions. It simply means that their opinions no longer hold the power to define you. You can listen to feedback, take it into account, and make improvements, but you no longer allow it to dictate your self-worth. You begin to trust your own inner compass, your intuition, and your personal values. When you do this, you are no longer a prisoner of external validation. You are free to live authentically and pursue your goals with confidence because you know that your value doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. The strength that comes from self-validation is transformative. It gives you the courage to follow your dreams, to speak your truth, and to take risks. It enables you to set boundaries with others, to say no when necessary, and to protect your energy and peace. When you validate yourself, you no longer need to seek validation from others through approval or praise. You no longer measure your worth by the number of likes, compliments, or accolades you receive. Your sense of self becomes grounded in something deeper, something that no one can take away from you. In learning to validate yourself, you tap into a well of inner power that allows you to navigate life with a sense of clarity and resilience. You stop seeking approval and instead become your own source of strength and affirmation. And when you no longer rely on others to validate you, you become truly free, free to be yourself, free to follow your own path, and free to live a life that is authentic and true to who you are. Because when you validate yourself, you no longer need anyone else to tell you that you are enough. You already know it. In a world that constantly encourages connection and interaction, the idea of being alone often carries a negative connotation. We are conditioned to believe that solitude equals loneliness, and loneliness is seen as something to avoid or fix. However, solitude, when embraced with intention, can be a powerful space for personal growth and transformation. It provides us with an opportunity to heal wounds that may have been ignored, to reflect on our life's journey, and to face the truths about ourselves that we may have been avoiding. Healing does not always occur in the presence of others. While the support of friends and loved ones can be invaluable, true healing often requires moments of silence, stillness, and solitude. In the quiet, we are able to connect with ourselves on a deeper level. We can acknowledge the pain that we've carried for so long, pain that may have been masked by the busyness of life or by the distractions of other people's needs. Being alone allows us to sit with our emotions without the pressure of having to explain them or justify them. In this space, we can process our grief, our disappointments, and our fears without the fear of judgment. It is through this process of acknowledging and accepting our emotions that healing begins. Solitude offers the space to reflect on our past and present, to examine the choices we've made and how they've shaped our lives. Reflection in solitude allows us to step back from the chaos of everyday life and gain a clearer perspective. We are often so caught up in the rush of meeting deadlines, fulfilling obligations, and pleasing others that we don't take the time to truly look at our lives and ask ourselves, are we living in alignment with who we are? Are we making choices that support our growth and well-being? Or are we simply going through the motions? In solitude, these questions arise naturally. The answers may not always be comfortable, but they are essential for our personal evolution. When we are alone, we are also able to confront the truths that we may have been avoiding. It is in the quiet of solitude that we can hear the voice within us that speaks truth about our desires, our fears, and our potential. Sometimes, the truths we hear in solitude are not the ones we want to acknowledge. They may reveal parts of ourselves that we have been hiding or denying, but facing these truths is the first step toward healing and transformation. When we allow ourselves to sit with these truths, rather than running from them, we open the door to change. We begin to see ourselves more clearly, to understand why we act the way we do, and to identify the patterns in our lives that need to be addressed. The act of being alone offers us the chance to reconnect with our own voice. In a world that is so full of noise, it's easy to lose touch with what we truly think, feel, and want. We often look to others for answers, for validation, or for guidance. But in solitude, we can hear our own inner voice without interference. It is in these quiet moments that we reconnect with our intuition, our sense of self, and our deepest desires. When we listen to ourselves, we begin to trust our own wisdom and develop a stronger sense of inner confidence. Solitude also allows us to reestablish boundaries. In the presence of others, we may unconsciously give away parts of ourselves in an attempt to please, conform, or fit in. But when we are alone, we are reminded of who we are and what we truly need. We can reflect on where our boundaries have been compromised and take the necessary steps to protect ourselves emotionally, physically, and mentally. Being alone gives us the clarity to recognize where we need to say no, in order to preserve our well-being, and where we need to say yes to the things that truly align with our values and purpose. Furthermore, solitude is not a place of stagnation, it is a space of creation and renewal. When we step away from the noise of the outside world, we open up room for inspiration, creativity, and self-expression. In solitude, we can explore our passions, cultivate new interests, and rediscover what excites us. It's a time to reconnect with the things that bring us joy without the pressure of others' expectations or opinions. In this space, we have the freedom to explore who we are and who we want to become without fear of judgment or comparison. Being alone is not an escape from the world, it is a return to oneself. It is a space where healing, reflection, and truth can unfold naturally. By embracing solitude, we create an opportunity to reconnect with our own hearts, minds, and souls. We give ourselves the time and space to heal old wounds, reflect on our life's path, and confront the truths that will set us free. Solitude, in its purest form, is not something to fear, but something to cherish. It is where the seeds of transformation are planted, and from that quiet space, we can emerge stronger, wiser, and more aligned with our authentic selves. In the modern world, we are often taught that strength is synonymous with visible action, physical endurance, loud voices, assertiveness, and constant striving. We look up to those who push through adversity with visible grit and determination, celebrating their accomplishments and their ability to keep going, despite the obstacles in their path. Yet, we rarely talk about the kind of strength that emerges in stillness, in moments of quiet, when no one is watching and the world's demands are temporarily put on hold. True strength isn't always forged in the most obvious forms of struggle. It is also cultivated in silence, in the moments when we are left alone to reflect, to grow, and to rebuild from within. When we think of struggle, we often imagine external battles, challenges in relationships, at work, in our personal lives. Struggle in the physical world can be overwhelming. It forces us to push ourselves to our limits, to act in response to pressures from both inside and outside. Yet, while struggle might test our resilience, it is in silence that we discover the true depth of our strength. In moments of silence, we are invited to look inward, to understand ourselves better, and to find the courage and resolve that live beneath the surface. Silence creates the space for us to reflect on our struggles, to process our emotions, and to gain clarity on the lessons hidden within our experiences. It's in those moments when we stop fighting against the noise of life that we learn the most about our inner strength. Strength, when built in silence, is not merely the absence of noise or activity. It is the ability to remain grounded, to find peace within, and to trust in our capacity to face difficulties from a place of calm. Life is full of ups and downs, and while external struggle might seem like the primary test of our strength, it is in silence that we become better equipped to handle what life throws our way. In silence, we learn to center ourselves, to find balance, and to approach life's challenges with a clear mind and a steady heart. During periods of quiet, we can connect with our inner wisdom, the part of us that knows how to handle difficulty without being swept away by the chaos around us. When we step away from the distractions of the world, we hear the quiet voice within that offers guidance, patience, and insight. This voice doesn't shout, it whispers, and it is only in silence, in stillness, that we can hear it clearly. Our strength is rooted in this wisdom, this quiet knowing that we are capable of handling whatever comes our way. It is in these quiet moments that we find the deep sense of self-trust that sustains us in times of external struggle. The power of silence also lies in the way it helps us process and heal. We all face challenges, and these struggles can be emotionally and mentally draining. Yet, in the noise of life, it can be difficult to process the emotions that come with hardship. Silence offers a sanctuary for this inner work. In silence, we are given the time and space to mourn our losses, to face our fears, and to make peace with our past. This is where true emotional resilience is built, not in the chaos of constant action, but in the quiet moments when we allow ourselves to feel, to understand, and to heal. Moreover, Silence builds strength because it helps us cultivate patience. We live in an impatient world where everything is fast-paced. We are encouraged to act quickly, to fix things immediately, and to be constantly in motion. But in silence, we are forced to slow down. We are forced to sit with our thoughts, our emotions, and our circumstances. This stillness teaches us that not everything requires an immediate reaction. Sometimes the greatest strength lies in waiting, in trusting that the right answer or solution will come when the time is right. Silence teaches us to be patient with ourselves, with others, and with life. When we spend time in silence, we also build strength in the form of self-discipline. In a noisy world, it can be easy to be pulled in many different directions. We are constantly bombarded with information, demands, and distractions. Silence offers an antidote to this overwhelming stimulus. By choosing to spend time in quiet, we practice self-discipline. We teach ourselves to resist the urge to constantly seek external stimulation, and to instead focus on what matters most: our inner growth, our peace, and our well-being. This practice of silence helps us cultivate a sense of control over our environment and our reactions to it, strengthening our ability to remain calm and composed, even in the midst of chaos. Strength, therefore, is not just something that is built through visible struggle. It is also built in the quiet moments when we choose to be still, to listen, and to reflect. It is in these moments of silence that we tap into the deep reservoir of resilience within us. We realize that we don't have to be constantly striving to be strong. Sometimes, strength comes from simply being present, being aware, and trusting in our ability to endure, to grow, and to heal. So, while struggle tests our strength, it is silence that nurtures it. It is in the quiet that we find our power, our peace, and our purpose. And it is from this place of inner stillness that we are truly able to face the world with unshakable strength. In a world that often places high value on social connection and external validation, the idea of enjoying one's own company may seem foreign or even intimidating to many. We live in a culture that promotes constant interaction, connection, and social approval. From a young age, we are taught that happiness and fulfillment come from relationships, from being seen, heard, and loved by others. While relationships and social interactions are undeniably important, true freedom begins when we learn to be content and fulfilled in our own presence. Enjoying your own company is not about avoiding others or shutting yourself off from the world. It is about discovering a sense of inner peace and happiness that doesn't depend on anyone else's presence, approval, or validation. When you enjoy your own company, you learn to appreciate the richness of your own thoughts, feelings, and experiences. You realize that you are not defined solely by your interactions with others or by external circumstances. You are complete in yourself. The joy that comes from being comfortable alone is profound. It is the joy of knowing that you do not need someone else to entertain you, validate you, or make you feel worthy. You are enough as you are. This realization is liberating. It frees you from the anxiety of constantly seeking approval or affection from others. When you can enjoy being by yourself, you stop feeling the pressure to conform to others' expectations or to meet the demands of external validation. You learn to trust in your own worth, independent of anyone's opinion. The freedom of enjoying your own company is also about self-discovery. When you are alone, you are given the space to get to know yourself more deeply. You can explore your thoughts, your desires, your dreams, and your fears without distraction or interference. You begin to understand your preferences, your values, and your unique perspective on life. This self-awareness is a powerful form of freedom because it allows you to live more authentically. When you know who you are and what truly matters to you, you can make choices that align with your true self, not choices influenced by others' opinions or societal pressures. You no longer have to look to the outside world for direction. You have the clarity to chart your own course. Moreover, when you enjoy your own company, you cultivate a sense of inner peace that remains unaffected by external circumstances. In today's world, we are often taught to chase after external markers of success and happiness. A bigger house, a better job, more recognition, or more social approval. These pursuits can lead to a cycle of constant striving, never feeling quite content or fulfilled, always seeking something outside of ourselves to fill the void. But when you are comfortable in your own presence, you realize that true peace doesn't come from external circumstances, it comes from within. You are not waiting for something or someone else to make you happy. You can find joy, contentment, and peace in the simple act of being. This inner freedom allows you to navigate life's challenges with a sense of calm and resilience, knowing that your happiness is not contingent on anything outside of yourself.